Hey guys, this is Toph, and today I want to do something a bit different. I was originally planning on doing something similar to this on my channel, but organizing with other people with conflicting schedules makes it kind of difficult, so I wanted to do this one that I can do on my own, and if need be, I can add other people down the line if possible. Anyways, I want to discuss the possibility of a Storm-like Hunter x Hunter game and brainstorm what a game such as that would involve. Now, let's get this out of the way. Yes, I know it's pronounced Hunter Hunter. If you guys take great issue with that, I'll try to switch the way I say it, but I just think Hunter x Hunter sounds epic and Hunter x Hunter sounds dirt. For this first video, I just want to get a feel for how everyone feels about this game idea and brainstorm some core philosophies and mechanics of the game. This video will be very long as I want to cover a lot of broad core concepts, but hopefully later videos on the subject, if people want more, will be a bit more concise. So I think the first question we should ask ourselves is, if we are comparing to and getting inspiration from the Storm games, what aspects of Storm can we all agree are possible to be positively implemented, and which need to be entirely removed or redone, and which are of a controversial nature? Of course, there will be dissenters on any given issue, and nearly everything would need at least some alterations, but I want to lay out the core concepts that I think the majority of Storm players would agree are good, bad, and controversial. So let's start with the good. A 3D playing field. How exactly this is implemented and how the camera would work and such we can discuss at a later time, but Storm wouldn't be Storm without this, and this is the main thing that sets Storm apart from traditional fighters. Tons of characters. This is a staple of Storm games that would fit beautifully with a similar Hunter x Hunter game. Of course, this creates balance issues, which we can discuss later, but the plethora of characters in and of itself is not something I think many would say is a bad thing or wouldn't fit with Hunter x Hunter. Number 3. Resource management-based combat. The core of Storm games is managing one's resources. Your health, shield, subs, and chakra all have differing levels of value and importance in any given situation, and is where many of the core skills you'll need to learn how to be effective at the game come from. I think this is one thing that makes Storm games combat so appealing it would work very well with Hunter x Hunter. Number 4, the support system and the leader switch system. I think Storm games have one of the best support systems, especially with being able to switch between supports in Storm 4. I do think there are several aspects of the support and leader change system that would need and could benefit from alterations, but at its core, I think it's a great mechanic and should be implemented. Number 5. Non-combo actions. I think this one sort of goes without saying, but special character actions like tilt, jutsus, and ultimate jutsus should be implemented, though of course it would revolve around Nen instead and would need some various alterations. Okay, so now let's move on to the bad. Number 1. Unintended flaws. What I mean by this are flaws in the game that aren't flaws with a core design, but rather extraneous issues that manifest due to shoddy programming, laziness, or other outside factors. I think we can all agree that we don't want a plethora of game-breaking glitches and laggy servers. These, of course, were not intended, but are still flaws with recent Storm games. There are several other issues like this, but I think we can all agree that these are potential issues with any game and should be avoided as best as possible. Number 2, online. Aside from the server issues in Storm, other online issues that are more to do with core design are the lack of spectator, which I think should be available in every single mode, and the ranking system, specifically not punching rage quitters. There should be severe punishment for rage quitting, and though this might harm some innocent people with shoddy internet, it's not logical for other people to have to suffer because some people can't take losses or have bad internet. If your internet is bad, you just have to accept the fact that you might be punished unjustly, but consider the people you have immensely inconvenienced with your terrible internet. Not that it's your fault, but the game should punish people at fault for their rage or bad connection, not the innocent people who don't rage and have suitable connections. That's somewhat of a controversial issue, I'm sure, but I think most people would agree with that. I think more people would agree with that than not agree with that. So, number 3. The principles of defense and offense. In the latest Storm games, I can't really judge the prior ones because I've only played from Storm 3 and up, so that's where this is coming from. So if it was different before, then, you know, great, but this is how I view it. But anyways, in the latest Storm games, it's apparent that the dynamics of defense and offense are skewed. Offensive tactics on their own merits are essentially useless and must be backed up with defense or extra offensive measures to be effective against even the most basic defensive tactics, aka blocking. Passive gameplay that relies on punishing opponents for their mistakes is the most effective way to deal damage while simultaneously maintaining your own resources. I think the defense is the best offense mantra of Storm games is immensely flawed. Of course there are ways around it, but the skill and resource investment for offense is too great when compared
to that of defensive tactics, especially given that in most instances, offensive tactics are still not as effective as defensive, even with drastic resource investment. This topic could easily be a video in and of itself, but safe to say, defense should be used to avoid and mitigate damage, and offense should be used to deal damage. There should not be tactics effective at both unless they are very resource intensive. This plays into balance, which itself could definitely be several videos. Number 4, character homogeny. Despite having over 100 characters, most of the characters in Storm are very similar in their functions, which has a lot to do with why they are so unbalanced in my opinion. Why choose Shikamaru when Naruto has better ground combos, air combos, jutsu, tilt, and support action? Sure, Shikamaru has an infinite combo, but with how the game functions, that isn't enough to balance the discrepancy in power. The only reason you'd pick Shikamaru is because you like him. He is just objectively not as good because the two characters function in essentially the same way, but Naruto is better in almost every way that counts. Sure, there are some unique characters such as Range and Puppets and Tatsuya, who is by far the most unique character, but for the most part, characters all function the same way, have the same amount of health, chakra, limited set of items, same amount of shield, guard, damage, everything. So there's little room for unique style and attributes. Again, this could be several videos on its own, so let's just go ahead and move on. That's the broad core concept of it. Number 5, community. I mean, we all know how terrible the Naruto community is. This is something that's kind of hard to control, but if such a game were to ever be released, I think it would be important for the leaders of the game community to promote helping new players and being respectful. This can only go so far, I know, but I think it would be everyone's job to try to make it a welcoming, competitive, and respectful community. It's obvious we don't have this in Storm. I don't know what all we can do to make it better, but I'll be thinking on it some and would love your guys' opinions on this particular matter, as it's kind of a rough and difficult to really do anything about situation.
So now let's talk about some things I think will be a bit more controversial. I don't think there's as clear-cut agreement within the community. I think for the most part, the other things I've covered in the good section are things most people would agree are good about Storm games, and the bad section most people would agree are bad about Storm games. But yeah, these are ones I think people will be more split about. So number 1, simplistic combos. I know a lot of people won't agree on this point, and I'm not saying it should be nearly as simplistic as Storm games, but the simplistic combos are the only thing that allow new players to even have any fun while getting destroyed by veterans. I think this is another aspect of Storm that sets it apart from traditional fighters and is necessary for new players and the core principle of the games. It makes the skill, though some people would argue there is no skill, which I think is mostly a bullshit idea, of Storm is not just about not about just knowing how to do basic attacks, but timing, reactions, movements, resource management, and other manifestations of skill that can't be compared to being good at math, aka just memorizing stuff. I do strongly think there should be more complexity than Storm, but I think most will agree it's a good thing to have a baseline that allows new players to be able to at least fight on a basic level, even if just completely horribly. I would never have gotten into Storm if I had to memorize strings of combos just to be able to beat Masked Mana in the Storm 3 demo. Number 2, Awakenings. Many people hate Awakenings, and I can understand the sentiment. In addition, I'm not sure if an Awakening system would function well in a Hunter x Hunter game. We'd have to explore every character and find something that could be used. Many characters would have obvious ones, but others I cannot think of a good one off the top of my head, and just glowing and being slightly stronger would be terribly lame. This would be an aspect that could be explored, but honestly it could also just as easily be ignored entirely. But I know lots of people probably have several opinions on both sides of that particular argument. Number 3, combo breakers. There would obviously have to be combo breakers in some capacity, but it would have to be a different concept and perhaps work entirely differently than subs. I'd have to dive into this idea and get a lot of feedback before feeling comfortable in my own stance, but regardless, I imagine this will be a highly debated topic. Obviously, I'm assuming anyone would even watch this or think this is a good idea in general, but if people, thought this was a good idea, then it would be a highly debated topic. Okay. So number 4, unintended/unexplained features. Storm 4 especially is full of unintended features, many of which I personally like and some that I don't. However, it is apparent to me that many of the things present in the game, the developers don't even know exist. I'm not talking about glitches, I'm talking leader switch cancels, charge jutsu to leader switch, charge chakra to leader switch, and other things of that nature that I think developers themselves wouldn't have seen coming and probably still don't know about. On the other hand, or on one hand, because their intentions are so unbalanced to begin with, many of these features actually help balance the game and add skill to the game. However, I think it would be better to simply plan for all the balance features and not rely on unintended features to make the game interesting. Even though I just said earlier combos should be somewhat simplistic, there still needs to be complexity to the game that makes it both balanced and fun to play without there being unintended features that mess with that balance. Number 5, details. Things like how much health should a guard have? I mean, there are hundreds of small debatable points within the points I've already discussed, and several hundred more that I probably missed entirely. The devil is in the details, and I think this is where Storm games often fail, and so details need to be addressed and ironed out. I'd like to talk about several different random things that come down the line. If you guys have any specific detail ideas you would like for me to discuss, please leave in the comments below. Some other things to consider are things like story mode. Is it better to have one giant story that, it covers the whole anime, just one game that covers the entire anime, or to have several games that, you do each game is like roughly an arc, maybe 2 arcs for some. There's just lots of different things. There's lots of ways you could do the entire story or the way it's a series. A lot of this is based on personal preference, industry, logistics, but I think things like this are worth discussing for sure. Anyways, guys, that's about it for the broad core concepts. In the future, I'd like to brainstorm several ideas in each broad category and other ones that I haven't discussed here. If you guys like this kind of game theorizing, please leave some comments below about what you think I've missed here, about the core principles, and or any ideas you might have about such a game, and if there is a certain topic you'd like me to discuss in the next video at length. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will talk to you guys in the next episode.